I used to think the sound of the front gate rattling meant safety. That rusty little squeak, like an old friend whispering hello, had always signaled routine. My wife was home, or maybe the gardener. But on that cloud-stilled Tuesday morning, the sound hit different. Sharper, offbeat. The gate rattled, and I heard it even from upstairs, over the whirring hum of the ceiling fan. I looked out from the bedroom window, expecting the usual delivery truck from Clearwater Springs. We'd signed up for the water service 2 years ago, back when we thought convenience was the key to happiness. I remember how excited Lily was, flipping through brochures, comparing delivery plans like a child picking candy. "It'll be so easy," she'd said. "Fresh, cool water, always here." That was her thing, obsessing over the details of comfort, of appearances. And there he was, the delivery guy. I'd never paid much attention to him before. Tall, bronze in that way only people who work outdoors get to be, and wearing the company's navy blue polo, sweat clinging to the fabric in patches. He lifted the 5-gallon jug like it was made of feathers. No hesitation, no struggle, just confident strength. I turned away and went back to the invoices spread across our bedroom desk. The house was quiet. Lily had taken the day off, claiming she had a migraine. She was downstairs when I left for my run earlier. Said she needed rest. But something in her voice, in her eyes that morning, had planted the first seed of discomfort in my gut. It was the way she smiled too fast. Her eyes didn't join the smile, and her fingers were tapping against the coffee cup in rhythm, nervous and mindless. I should have gone back to work after my run, but the quiet of the house lured me into a different kind of inspection. I walked slowly through the hallway, past the frames of our wedding, vacations, baby showers that never led to babies. Downstairs, I paused near the stairwell. I heard voices. Lily's voice, light and lilting, like she used to sound when we were still dating. Then laughter, not the polite kind. No, it was a breathy, melting sort of laugh, the kind she used when she felt beautiful, desired. The living room was sunlit and quiet when I entered. Too quiet. The back patio door was open a crack, and through it, I heard it again. Laughter, low and shared. I moved toward the patio with slow, even steps. My heart began to thud, but not with suspicion. Not yet. It was the surreal detachment that hits you when reality starts to melt at the edges. I didn't make a sound. I stood just out of view, behind the curtain. My breath caught in my throat. There she was, Lily, sitting on one of the deck chairs in her robe. Legs crossed, skin glowing. Her head tilted up, her fingers playing with the edge of her glass. Her hair was loose, framing her face the way it used to in the early years, before she pulled it back into practicality. And there he was, him, the water guy. But this time, he wasn't just dropping off jugs. He was seated, in my chair, close to her. Too close. His name, I would later find out, was Nathan. But at that moment, he was just a stranger invading my home with his ease, his familiarity. He laughed at something she said, and then he reached forward, hand brushing hers as he set down his bottle. It was intimate in the way that made my stomach lurch. I backed away before they saw me. I moved like a ghost through my own home, retreating upstairs. My hands were shaking as I closed the bedroom door. I sat at the desk again, not really seeing the spreadsheets in front of me. A part of me was still hoping I'd misread it, that it was innocent, that I was imagining it all. But my gut, it had already begun to rot. That night, she didn't mention him. I didn't ask. The next few days were slow burns. She smiled more often. She dressed just a touch more carefully. There was a new perfume, a citrusy scent with hints of something smoky and wild. I'd never smelled it before. And then came the pattern. Every Tuesday and Friday morning, the gate would squeak. She would magically be home with a headache. The deliveries were no longer left at the front door. They were being carried in, placed carefully in the kitchen, while she hovered with unnecessary gratitude. I set up a camera, just one, tucked into a forgotten vent near the staircase. I told myself it was just to prove myself wrong, to feel stupid, even. But when I reviewed the footage, my blood went cold. They didn't kiss. Not then. Not yet. But the tension was there, coiled and aching. The lingering touches. The way he looked at her like she was already his. And she, my wife, smiled in that slow, melting way that used to be reserved only for me. I started tracking the deliveries. Checked the timestamps on our front gate. Installed a new smart lock app. Reviewed her phone logs when she left her device in the kitchen. His number wasn't saved as Nathan, or water delivery. It was saved as W. Just W. And the messages? They weren't explicit, but they didn't need to be. One read, "Tuesday's still good." Her reply, "Can't wait. Bring me something cold." That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, long after she had gone to bed. The house was dead silent, but the noise inside me was deafening. I didn't sleep. The next Tuesday, I stayed home from work. I told her I was feeling off. She looked surprised, but not suspicious. I watched her as she floated through the morning like it was a holiday. Coffee, light breakfast, hair curled, silk robe. At exactly 10:27 a.m., the gate rattled. I watched from behind the curtain again. This time, they didn't waste time on small talk. She let him in. He placed the jug down on the counter, and she turned to him with that same open smile. He reached for her face, fingers trailing down her cheek. I stepped back, heart in my throat. My marriage had been reduced to a stolen Tuesday. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't ready to hear the excuses or the lies. Instead, I left the house silently before she noticed. Drove aimlessly until the sun began to set. I ended up by the lake. Our lake. The place where I proposed. The place she cried and said yes. I sat on the hood of the car and stared out over the water, feeling everything and nothing at once. Something inside me had cracked, and I had no idea how far the damage would spread. I avoided Tuesdays. That was my quiet rebellion. I'd work late, offer to cover shifts, pick up mindless errands that needed no doing. Anything to not be there. Anything to not hear the gate squeak and know he was on the other side. Lily never asked where I went. She just smiled at me when I came home, kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted leftovers. Her calmness unsettled me more than guilt ever could. She didn't seem like someone carrying a secret. She seemed free. I started noticing other things. Little things. The bathroom smelled different. More masculine. Faint notes of cologne I didn't wear. The towels, my towels, folded a different way. Lily had always folded them lengthwise. Now they were rolled into tight spirals like a hotel display. Her underwear drawer had new pieces, lacy and unfamiliar. There were receipts too, stashed in her coat pocket, from boutique places she used to mock for being overpriced. I found a blue thread on the couch cushion one evening, bright and fine, like it belonged to a different kind of fabric. It was wedged between the seams, barely visible unless you were looking. But I was looking. Every corner, every shadow, every misplaced item had become a clue in a puzzle I hadn't consented to build. And there were the silences. The heavy, pregnant silences between us. I tried to remember the last time we had laughed. Not a polite chuckle, not a performative dinner table smile, but real, gut-level laughter. I couldn't recall. Our conversations had become small, clipped things. Grocery lists, weather updates. Her migraines were more frequent. Her phone, more guarded. I wondered if she knew that I knew. If she was daring me to say something. Or if, somehow, in her version of this betrayal, I had no role left to play. Then, on a Thursday evening, she brought him up. "Have you ever talked to Nathan?" she asked, not looking up from her salad. I blinked. My fork froze midway. "The delivery guy?" She nodded. "He's interesting. Used to be a carpenter before Clearwater hired him. Travels a lot. He's restoring a boat, actually. An old wooden thing. Classic lines. Reminds me of that one we saw in Seattle, remember?" I remembered. It was our 3rd anniversary trip. Rainy, messy, perfect. We'd stood beneath a pier wrapped in each other's coats, watching an old sailboat drift lazily through the fog. "You talk to him much?" I asked, my voice tight. "Sometimes. You know how I get when someone starts talking about restoration projects." I nodded slowly. The fork felt like lead in my hand. There was no guilt in her voice, just casual admiration, as if she were describing a neighbor's garden or a painting she liked. I began to feel like a stranger in my own life. That weekend, I drove to Clearwater's local depot. I parked across the street, pretending to scroll through emails on my phone while my eyes stayed fixed on the entrance. I watched the trucks roll in, the drivers laughing, stretching, finishing routes. Then I saw him. Nathan. He didn't look like a home wrecker. That's the part one couldn't reconcile. He had kind eyes, wore worn jeans, a beat-up Yankees cap. He looked like someone who fixed your fence without charging extra. Someone who helped neighbors move furniture on weekends. He didn't look like someone who would walk into another man's home and peel a wife out of her silk robe. But that's what he was. I followed his truck the next Tuesday. My job was flexible enough. and I had built an alibi. I trailed behind, careful not to get too close, watching as he moved through neighborhoods like a blue-uniformed ghost. He made a few stops, normal ones, driveways, porches, casual ways from suburban housewives. Then he turned onto our street. My street. I parked around the corner and watched as he pulled into the driveway. She opened the door before he rang the bell. I watched them talk. She touched his arm. He leaned in, smiling. Then she stepped aside and let him in. The door closed behind them. I sat in the car for 37 minutes. Not thinking, just sitting, hands on the wheel, engine running, eyes on nothing. Eventually, I drove away. I couldn't sleep that night. The bedroom felt wrong, like the walls were breathing in a rhythm I couldn't match. I lay on my side, staring at Lily's back. She slept so peacefully. A soft smile tugged at the corner of her lips. I wanted to scream. Instead, I slipped out of bed, went downstairs, and sat in the dark kitchen with the security footage pulled up on my laptop. This time, I didn't just watch. I recorded. I needed to see it clearly, to know how far it had gone. What I saw made my chest seize. There was no sex. Not yet. But the intimacy was unmistakable. The way she leaned into him. The way he brushed a strand of hair from her face. The way their knees touched when they sat. He brought a small wooden box. She opened it and laughed. Inside was a carved pendant, blue-stained maple, polished and strung on a leather cord. She slipped it on around her neck. She wore it to bed that night. I didn't ask. I didn't confront. I simply watched. A storm was building in me, quiet but relentless. The kind that pulls trees from their roots. And then it happened. 1 week later, I returned home early. I told no one. The sky was dimming when I pulled into the driveway. Her car was there. His truck was parked 2 blocks down. I knew it was him. I'd memorized the dents in the rear bumper. I didn't slam the car door. I didn't rush. I walked in through the garage, every step slow, deliberate. The house was silent. Too silent. I moved like a phantom, up the stairs, down the hall. Their voices, low murmurs, spilled from the guest room. Not our bedroom. The guest room. I pressed my ear to the door. A soft moan. Then laughter. The world blurred around me. And just as I reached for the doorknob, just as I braced myself for what I thought I would see, I heard the unmistakable creak of the old floorboard. Inside, someone went still. Then Lily's voice. "Did you hear that?" Silence. I turned and walked away before the door could open. The storm hadn't yet broken, but it was coming. There's a moment, right before a dam breaks, where everything goes still. Not quiet, still. A suffocating pause between pressure and release. That's what my house felt like in the days after I nearly opened that guest room door. Lily must have heard the floorboard. Maybe she even suspected it was me. But she said nothing. The next morning, she was in the kitchen early, humming softly as she sliced strawberries into a bowl. She offered me a bite. Her eyes sparkled like glass in sunlight. I declined. She didn't ask why. It was like we were both actors in a play that had long abandoned its script. She played the part of the attentive wife. I played the part of the man too busy to notice his world was crumbling. The difference was I was acting. She seemed to be thriving in it. The necklace stayed. That damn blue pendant. She wore it constantly, tucked under her blouse like a secret medal. I saw her fingers toy with it when she thought I wasn't looking. A gentle rub, like a talisman. Sometimes she whispered to it, barely audible murmurs I couldn't catch. On a Friday afternoon, when she left to visit her sister, I went into the guest room. It had always been a sterile space, and used untouched. But now, it smelled faintly of her perfume, and something earthier. Sawdust. Varnish. There was a blanket draped across the bed. One I hadn't seen before. Soft navy cotton with tiny water stains near the corner. The kind of stains left behind by hands that didn't have time to dry. I opened the nightstand. Inside, a small envelope. No name, no return address. I opened it with a strange calmness. Inside, a single photograph. Black and white. Lily asleep. Naked from the shoulders up. Hair spread across a pillow I didn't recognize. Her lips slightly parted. Peaceful. Exposed. It wasn't a picture I had taken. I put it back. I didn't rage. I didn't break anything. That kind of reaction would have belonged to the man I used to be. But that man was dying. Or maybe evolving. I started my own game. I scheduled an appointment at Clearwater Springs under a fake name. Said I was interested in setting up a business account. When they gave me a meeting with their regional rep, I asked specifically for Nathan. They obliged. We met at a cafe across town. Neutral ground. I wore sunglasses and an old jacket. Made sure he wouldn't recognize me from my own doorstep. He arrived 10 minutes late. His handshake was firm, friendly. His smile was easy. He sat across from me and pulled out a folder filled with brochures and discount plans. I didn't care about any of that. I just watched him, studied him. He spoke with passion about hydration, clean water, and health. He had a small scar near his left eyebrow. His nails were clean, his shoes scuffed. He mentioned, offhand, that he had grown up in Oregon, that he loved boats, that he lived alone in a converted warehouse loft downtown. I let him talk. The more he talked, the more I realized I didn't hate him. Not the way I wanted to. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't some manipulative predator. He was normal. And somehow, that made it worse. After the meeting, I followed him. I stayed 3 cars behind as he drove his delivery van out of the parking lot and through the city streets. I memorized the turns. He parked near a rust-red building tucked behind a warehouse district, abandoned factories, graffiti, and silence. He walked up a metal staircase and disappeared behind a blue door. So that was his nest. That was where he brought her. Later that night, Lily returned home glowing. Her cheeks were flushed, her steps light. She tossed her purse on the table and kicked off her shoes with a giddy little sigh. I said nothing, but I noticed the bruise on her collarbone. Faint, circular, the shape of a man's mouth. The next morning, I was waiting in the driveway when Nathan's van arrived. This time, I made sure I was seen. He pulled up, stepped out, and his eyes met mine. Recognition, then confusion, then a flicker of fear. "Morning," I said coolly. Hi," he replied. "I'm here for the water. I know who you are." A pause. He shifted his weight. "Look, man, I'm not going to hit you. That'd be too easy. Too fast." His mouth tightened. "Then what do you want?" "To understand," I said. "Tell me why." He looked down, then back up. "It wasn't planned. I swear. She just started talking to me one day. She was lonely. Said you weren't home much. That things felt distant." "Did you love her?" His jaw worked. "I don't know. I think I might." I stared at him for a long moment. "Then you'll understand what comes next." I turned and walked back into the house without another word. That night, I told Lily I needed space. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I simply said, "I'm leaving for a few days." She blinked, caught off guard for the first time in weeks. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice tight. "To a place I don't have to pretend." She stared at me, stunned. "Are you ending this?" "I don't know," I said. "I just know I need to be somewhere he hasn't touched." I packed lightly. A duffel bag. My laptop. One of the old photographs of us, back when we were real. I took the car and drove until the streetlights disappeared and the sky stretched open like a wound. I checked into a roadside motel and sat in the dim yellow light of the room, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the distant cries of freight trains. My phone buzzed once. A message from Lily. "You're not being fair." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and began organizing the footage, the messages, the photos. I wasn't ready to destroy her. Not yet. But I needed the option. On the second night, there was a knock at my motel door. I checked the peephole. Lily. She looked small, frightened, wet from the rain. I opened the door. "Why are you here?" I asked. Her voice trembled. "Because I can't lose you." She stepped inside. I didn't stop her. She held something in her hand. A ring. Not mine. His. She placed it on the desk. I ended it. I stared at her, searching for lies. For shadows. But what I saw was pain. Real, raw, unfiltered. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "But not for the reasons you think." I sat down. She looked at me, tears welling. And that's when she said it. "He's not who he says he is." "He's not who he says he is," Lily repeated. She stood in the doorway of the motel room, soaked from the rain, trembling like someone who had just seen a ghost. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from absence, like whatever version of her had run toward this affair had burned up and scattered in the wind. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The words she'd just thrown into the air cracked open something beneath my skin. Not because I was surprised, because I wasn't. She crossed the room slowly, dropped the ring, his ring, onto the small laminate desk by the bed. It clinked softly, rolling once before coming to rest beside my laptop. It was modest, faded, not something I imagine a man like Nathan would wear. "I found it in the drawer in the guest room," she said. He must have left it by accident. She exhaled sharply. That's not the strange part. I sat down on the edge of the bed, watching her carefully. I took it to a jeweler, she continued. I wanted to know what kind of man wears something like that. The stamp on the inside. It had initials and a date. And she hesitated. The date was from 10 years ago, and the initials were mine. It didn't make sense. Not at first. She opened her purse and pulled out a photograph. Black and white. I recognized it instantly. It was the one I had found in the nightstand. The one of her asleep. This wasn't taken recently, she said. It's from college. Before I ever met you. Before any of this. She looked up, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Nathan wasn't just a guy who delivers water, she whispered. He's someone from my past. Someone I forgot. Or maybe blocked out. I leaned forward. What are you saying? She swallowed. I think I knew him. Years ago. Briefly. I think he was someone I dated. For a few weeks. Nothing serious. I didn't remember until I saw the photo again. He must have kept it. All this time. A cold realization began to take shape in the back of my mind. So this wasn't random. She shook her head. He knew who I was. From the beginning. He asked to be assigned to our neighborhood. I didn't recognize him until it was too late. The weight of that settled between us like a third presence. I tried to trace back the timeline, the quiet starts, the moments that seemed like chance but now felt designed. Every Tuesday, every detail. He groomed the situation, I said, my voice low. He waited. She nodded, and her voice cracked. And I walked right into it. The motel room felt too small for the enormity of what hung in the air. My wife had been unfaithful. That was its own storm. But now there was a deeper undercurrent. This wasn't about passion. It wasn't even about desire. It was about control and revenge. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the rain had stopped. The streetlight illuminated a quiet road littered with wet leaves. What do you want from me, Lily? I asked, still facing the window. She didn't respond right away. Then, I want you to come home. I want to fix this. I know it might be too late, but I had to tell you the truth. I turned. The truth? Or just the part of it you remembered? She closed her eyes. I know I failed you. I know I hurt you. And I can't undo it. But I ended it. I confronted him. Told him I remembered. He denied it at first. Then he smiled. A shiver ran down my spine. He told me I still looked exactly the same. That he waited years for this. It was all too neat. Too calculated. Nathan had worn the disguise of innocence. The casual uniform of an everyman. The charm of someone you forget 5 minutes after meeting them. But underneath, he had plotted. I asked quietly, do you think he's dangerous? She was silent. I don't know, she finally said. I thought he just wanted me. Now I think he wanted to ruin us. A beat passed. I don't even know if he's still in town. I opened my laptop. Pulled up the last footage from the house security cam. From yesterday. There was no water delivery. No Nathan. Just a black car parked on the street for 20 minutes. Windows tinted. Engine off. He was watching. Waiting. That night, we went back to the house together. Lily was quiet. She stayed close, as if expecting the walls themselves to judge her. The guest room was emptied. The blue blanket gone. The pendant necklace left on the dresser like an apology. I didn't sleep. I waited. The next morning, I drove to the warehouse loft district. His blue door was ajar. Inside, the place was barren. Empty save for an old mattress and a workbench. No photos. No clothes. Not even a coffee mug. He was gone. But on the workbench, there was a note. Just 3 words, scrawled in thick black ink. You saw her. I stared at it for a long time. Not sure what he meant. Not sure if it was a warning or an accusation. Maybe both. Back at home, I handed Lily the note. She read it, then folded it in half and burned it over the sink. I'm not the woman he saw, she said. Not anymore. But I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure if I was the man she remembered either. We didn't get a clean ending. There were no therapy sessions. No tearful reconciliations. We didn't throw away the old bed sheets or light sage or take a second honeymoon. We didn't even talk about it much after that. Instead, we lived. Quietly. Carefully. Like people nursing invisible injuries. She stayed. And so did I. But there was space now. Space between words. Between touches. Between breaths. Like a scar that doesn't hurt anymore, but never quite fades. I kept the photograph. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. A reminder that sometimes the greatest betrayals don't come from the enemy. They come from the person who once whispered that they would never leave your side. And sometimes they don't. They just leave you watching.